let people. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this month's Diversibility Unplugged, International Disability Advocacy, a conversation that celebrates International Day of Persons with Disabilities, which is on December 3rd. While we give everyone a few minutes to join, before we begin, I want to take this time to describe the image on the screen. It's a light blue background with navy text. At the top is a navy and teal gradient header with the words, "Please keep microphone muted throughout the event." Below the gradient header is navy text, Diversibility Unplugged, International Disability Advocacy centered around above 4 round hashtags from left to right: Haseeb, Abbasi, he, him, 2022, D30 Honoree, Pakistan, Winfred, Wanja, Kirumia, he, her, 2022, D30 Honoree, Kenya, Abbasi, Kouakou, he, him, 2022, D30 Honoree, Côte d'Ivoire, and Robbie, Watene, he, her, 2020 D30 Honoree, New Zealand. Below the pictures to the left is a navy banner with light blue font that reads "Moderator Mary Fasher, he, her, DLC Community Manager, Diversability 2021 D30 Honoree," along with a picture of her. Right aligned near the bottom of the words, "Join our communities." The Diversibility Leadership Collective, diversability.mn.co, where you can get your first week free. Centered at the bottom are two logos, a navy diversibility one and a black interpreter now one. Without further ado, let's begin. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Mary Fasher. I use she, her pronouns. For accessibility purposes, my visual description is: I am a Lebanese woman with short, dark, curly hair. I am wearing glasses, a cream-colored turtleneck sweater, headphones, and speaking into a black microphone. I am coming to you from my home office in Brunswick, Georgia, which has white walls and art on the walls. I have the pleasure of being the DLC Community Manager at Diversability, where our entirely disabled team works to ensure we are elevating disability pride together through community and conversation. Tonight's Powerhouse panel features disability advocates across the globe who all have one thing in common. Each one of us have had the honor of being on Diversibility's D30 Disability Impact List, myself included. The D30 Impact List was the first of its kind award created in 2020 to honor the trailblazing accomplishments of leaders in the disability community globally. As a reminder, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the event. So make sure to leave your questions in the chat with the letter Q in front of them. Something that we ask you to be mindful of during tonight's discussion: advocacy, particularly disability advocacy, is different throughout the world. That being said, let's give our panelists a chance to introduce themselves and share a little bit about themselves, starting with their visual descriptions. I'll start with Robbie.
Thank you, Mary. Kia ora. My name's Robbie, and I'm a 33-year-old disability rights advocate from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And by way of image description, I'm a white woman in my early 30s. I've got shoulder-length hair, and I'm wearing thick-rimmed glasses, a black t-shirt, and denim dungarees. And I'm sitting in a black office chair with a plain wall behind me, which has some certificates on it. So to introduce myself, I was born with a condition called phocomelia, and this meant that the bones in the lower half of my body didn't develop properly before birth. So born without a left leg and many of the bones missing in my right leg, I learned to walk on a prosthetic limb that became known as Lucy leg, because what toddler or baby can say prosthesis, right? Now my journey as a disability advocate has been a bit of a roller coaster, from Lucy leg being a natural part of my physique to absolutely despising Lucy leg and hating her, to coming out as a proud disabled woman or woman with a disability in my late teens. I just wanted to note that here in New Zealand, we intentionally use identity first language, but I'm going to try my best to stick with person first language. But if I forget, then you know why. I've got a background in international peace building and conflict resolution with a focus on inclusive and accessible peace building. I currently work as a researcher at the Donald Beasley Institute, where I have the absolute honor and privilege of building and leading a team of researchers with disabilities who are tasked with monitoring the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities here in New Zealand. And I'm also the co-founder and director of the Lucy Foundation, and we've created the world's first value chain of coffee that is entirely inclusive of people with disabilities, from the farmers in Mexico all the way to the consumers here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. What else? I'm a wife. I'm a mum to a pocket rocket 1-year-old who is already faster and more determined and stronger willed than I am. So I'll leave it there. It's a pleasure to join you today, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Robbie. And I love what you said about Lucy, right? Because yes, what toddler can say prosthesis, right? And we want to take a moment to honor that there is no right way to identify when you are talking about language. So person first or identity first, either one is acceptable. However you choose to identify is completely valid. So thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to move on to Haseeb. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Thank you. So first of all, my name is Haseeb Abbasi. I'm Sergeant Driver International Global Messenger, representing Special Olympics movement, which represents over 6 million athletes with intellectual disabilities around the world. I am also the CEO of my own juice shop called Squeezy the Juice Bar. I also have a job as a library assistant at the Foundation University, Rawalpindi. Apart from that, I am a cyclist. I've cycled all over the country, from the Rocky Mountains of the Himalayas to the sandy beaches of Karachi. I'm a motivational speaker. I published a book called The Stories of Special Souls and most importantly, I'm a disability rights advocate. In my endeavors, I met presidents, ministers, CEOs, celebrities, but I mostly like to work with the youth. I believe that the youth of today is the mindset of tomorrow, and that making them aware regarding the challenges of people with disabilities means that tomorrow, when they go into position of importance, they will make more inclusive choices. Thank you.
Thank you, Haseeb. And yes, the use of create or the mindset of tomorrow. It's an excellent thing that you said. So I really appreciate that quote. Abbasi, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you? Abbasi, you're muted.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ahouty Kouakou. I'm a person with disability, a wheelchair user. I'm from Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire is a country located in West Africa. I have a bachelor degree in communication and anthropology. And in my country, our first language is French. And apart from the academic records, I'm also leadership skills. I'm the founder and the executive director of an organization, a local organization called Action et Humanisme. It is an organization which aim is to advance the rights of people with disabilities in general in my country. And in line with that, there are some programs that contribute to equip people with disabilities with leadership skills, entrepreneurship skills, and um, also the trainer of my organization. And I used to develop some programs on behalf of people with disabilities. And additionally, I have also movement building skills because I'm among the movement catalysts in my country that used to defend the rights of people with disabilities because they are excluded from job opportunities. So I was among the people who carry out movement in 2018 to push our government to in order to recruit people with disability to work in the public administration. And it was a successful movement because after the campaign, the government took a decree to recruit annually at least 200 persons with disability to work in the public administration. And apart from that, I also initiated some programs that contribute to the financial independence of people with disabilities. And I'm very happy to be here. And I hope in the coming hours, I'll go deeper with the accomplishments in our work. So,
Thank you very much.
listening.
Winfred, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Winfred. Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello. Am I audible? I'm called Winfred Wanja Kirumia from Embu. I'm a single mother of 2 sons. I am an epileptic person in visible disability. I'm also a secretary of Camille Persons with Disability. I'm also a digital dad at the Disability Organization, where I'm currently interning. I do advocate for the rights of young women and girls with disabilities, especially those with invisible disabilities. I advocate for equitable inclusion in disability sector. Here in disability sectors, we need to level the playing ground of those different types of disabilities. In our hotel room in Nairobi, I traveled from Embu to prepare to celebrate the UN Day with other counties here in Nairobi. It's our capital city. Yes, I was also an honoree for 2022 Diversability. I'm wearing a black t-shirt, seated in a chair with a plain wall in the background. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Winfred. We are going to get started with the questions for this evening. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to commemorate today is December 1st. It is World AIDS Day, and we want to take a moment to remember those in the disability community who have passed away from HIV or AIDS-related illnesses. We want to take a moment to remember them as well. Thank you. I'm going to start my first question. I'm going to start with Robbie. Robbie, how is disability viewed in your country, and how has that shaped your advocacy? Because disability often, when we talk about advocacy, it's often from a Western lens, and we don't think about international disability advocacy. So how is disability viewed in your country, and how has that shaped you not only as a person but an advocate and your advocacy as well?
Really good question. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Aotearoa New Zealand or New Zealand, we're a small country at the bottom of the world, kind of just below Australia, with a population of about 5 million. So pretty small in the scheme of things. But for a small nation, we've always punched above our weight when it comes to disability rights advocacy. We have a long history of disability rights advocacy, but around 2001, we were one of the only countries in the world that already had developed a disabled person-led disability strategy based on the social model of disability. And this put us in a really interesting position to inform the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which New Zealand played a really integral role in that, setting that up. And we were one of the first countries to ratify the convention. Now, since then, and this is the time when I've been growing up in New Zealand, over the last 14 years, our community has worked tirelessly to harmonise our national policies, our programs, our legislation, our services to make sure that they align with the convention. And actually, this has all kind of come to a peak this year. Some of you may be aware that in July, we became one of the first countries to establish an entire ministry in our government dedicated to disability. And they've been tasked with rolling out a really innovative approach to disability supports and services called Enabling Good Lives. So to go back to your question, Mary, in New Zealand, we're going through this really incredible time of transformation. In principle, I would say we're going from the moral, the charity, and the medical model of disability, and we're transforming to the social and rights model of disability. But I wanted to say that this doesn't mean that we've got it completely right, and we've no way made it when we're talking about disability rights in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Our research shows that people with disabilities are still reporting being treated as second-class citizens, and we can see huge gaps in the implementation of disability rights and the continued violation of disability rights in our country. So we have a long way to go until our actions reflect the vision that New Zealand is a non-disabling society. So that's where my advocacy has grown, is amongst this narrative of transformation. It's important to note that New Zealand, we have Indigenous people, Maori, and so yeah, you're right. When we talk about advocacy, we often talk about it from a Western perspective, which has been very influential in New Zealand. But what we're seeing now is an incredible and important rise of Indigenous perspectives on disability and advocacy in that space. So it's a really exciting space to be in, but we've got a long way to go, I tell you that.
Thank you, Robbie. And you got some very enthusiastic response in their chat. Tiffany said that's amazing. Go New Zealand. Marie said lead the way New Zealand. I feel like we also here in the US, we are not treated as second class, but even third class citizens. So we can learn from New Zealand, and like you said, maybe it's not perfect, but it is a shift in perspective, which is something that we are in desperate need of when it comes to disability rights. So thank you for that wonderful response. Haseeb, how is disability viewed in Pakistan, and how has that helped shape who you are as a person and an advocate?
In developing countries like Pakistan, disability isn't usually on the agenda for lawmakers and people with power. This isn't always due to a lack of empathy, it's just because there are bigger problems that need to be tracked first. However, this means that people with disabilities usually struggle for their basic rights like healthcare, education, and work. Most people are not aware regarding the rights of people with disabilities, and that is why people with disabilities are not treated in the best manner. Life as a person with disability in Pakistan is changing, but there are many out there who are actively trying to change this. Amazing people who are making more and more people aware regarding the rights of people with disabilities. This has to some extent helped many, especially people who have disabilities but not intellectual disabilities. With people with intellectual disabilities, the key issue is that most of us really can't speak up for ourselves. Some people consider us cursed or a former punishment on our parents for some sins. They laugh us as mad or retarded and make fun of us. However, things are changing now thanks to technology and social media. Life has started to improve for some people now knowing more than they did, and it's because of people who are raising their voices. For example, I started my shoe shop in 2020 right after the first COVID lockdown ended in Pakistan. At that time, most people were very skeptical of my idea. They said, how can a person with an intellectual disability run a business? Now, the same people are my most loyal customers. One such customer went on to offer me a job at Foundation University, where I currently work. So I want to show people in the community and set an example that people with intellectual disability too can work and find their own ways of earning an honest living for themselves.
Thank you very, very much, Haseeb. And it's ironic how people who doubt you because of your disability, then, like you said, become your biggest customers or your biggest fans. And it should not be that we have to prove ourselves, but we often do have to prove ourselves. Thank you so much. Um, Abbasi, what is something you are advocating for in Côte d'Ivoire? And for those who don't know, Côte d'Ivoire is Ivory Coast. What is something you are advocating for in the Ivory Coast when it comes to disability rights that other people like myself here in the United States may not be aware of? And before you answer, could you please make sure you are closer to the mic so we can hear you well, hear your response? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In my country, disability is perceived differently according to beliefs, according to cultures and social environment. So based on this fact, some people think that disability is a curse. It is something, it is an anger of God, the anger of deities, and it's another part of the population think that disabled people are people who continually need assistance. So they minimize people with disabilities, they minimize the potentialities of people with disabilities. And this situation prevents them to access to some social and professional opportunities. And front of this injustice, as a person with disability, I decided to stand up and change this perception of disability in our country, to change the minds of people on disability. So for that, I started to work on people with disability first, to help them to be self-confident, to accept their situation so that they can move to other step of their life and take their destiny in their hands. And on the other hand, as my country ratified the UN Convention for People with Disabilities, we have noticed that it's not effective in our country. So we push the government to respect the engagement and to take concrete measures that will help people with disability to live a decent life, to live in better conditions. So we proceed by some movement building, and also sometimes I write letters, open letters, and policy memo to invite the government to invest more resources in the disabilities matters, and also to incite the government to make building accessible, because in our country there are not enough building for people that are accessible for people with disability. In the public transport, public transport are not accessible to people with disabilities. So we are struggling to make this situation better for people with disabilities in our country. So based on the injustice they face in their life, based on the situation, difficult situation people with disabilities face in our country, I decided to advocate so that things can change and allow people with disability also to reach their full potential, to contribute to the social, economic, and social economic development of our country. Because our rule motto is no one must be left behind. So people with disability must be included in all the process of the development of our country. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahouty. And it's important again to recognize that so many of us are in the US, and we have to acknowledge that although we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, there are a lot of countries that do not have similar legislature, and that there are disabled people throughout the world that are still fighting for even more basic rights than we are fighting for here in the United States and in the Western world. Winfred, would you like to talk about something you are advocating for when it comes to disability rights in your country that some people may not know is an issue?
Here in Kenya, disability is termed like a curse, a taboo. When you are disabled, you face all kind of stigma, discrimination, name calling, and then you are denied some activities in the community. Even you are discriminated by your family members. You are denied your rights, inheritance, succession. You are not entitled to own any property. When it comes to getting jobs, when you are disabled, is a total challenge, and that thing is overwhelming. In the politics, when you are disabled, and if you want to vie for the elective position, when you are doing your campaign, people don't listen to you. Even in some churches, some religions, you are not seen as a human being, even in the healthcare services. You see, like the women, you are denied your sexual reproductive health right. Even you are not entitled to get married or to give birth. When you visit a hospital, you are seen as if you have done another mistake. And some mates read people with disabilities to be sacrificed when there is drought, there is no rain. You fear because you can go to a street and then you are kidnapped and then you are going to be sacrificed. You are seen as if you are going to praise God. Some mates make us disabled to be used for Christian purposes. And that's why many, especially women with disability is making us to live in absolute poverty because we are denied most of the things. For me, I do advocate for inclusion and the rights for women with a disability, because when you are disabled as a woman, you face double discrimination here in Kenya, and I think majority of African countries, because of your gender, you are female. The discrimination of you being a female, it's all, you are seen with another thing. Then you want to have disability. Now you face the double discrimination and you are denying most of the things. I also advocate for women and girls with disability to be seen as sexual beings. We have a right to know our rights. We were created by God with the image. We need to enjoy our sexual right. We need to get to be allowed to participate in our communities, even in engaging in marriage. And then here in Africa, when you are a woman with a disability, there are some myths, especially those with invisible disabilities. You are forced to be circumcised. So I advocate for women forefront. I fight for women not to be circumcised, but men end up being assaulted. Your security is not good. And when you go to seek justice, it is denied because you're a woman, you have disability, and then poverty is there. And many of the time the justice is denied due to the corruption in Kenya, which is too high. Yes, we are suffering here in Kenya, especially women in the rural.
Thank you so much, Winfred. Winfred made several points, and I want to first say something that I always say and I advocate about. Disability is political, and that is something that we are seeing tonight and hearing tonight, that disability is political. And the other thing is that reproductive health care is disability rights. It's a disability rights issue. So reproductive health care for all genders is a disability rights issue and one that should be talked about more. So thank you, Winfred, for sharing your advocacy, sharing what you're doing for the women and girls of Kenya. And please know that you are not alone. that victims of sexual assault who are disabled are often discounted. I speak as a survivor myself. Our stories are often discounted and we are not believed. So we want to applaud the work that you're doing, and it's something very important that needs to be talked about and talked about very openly. Let us shift gears. This year's theme of International Day of People with Disabilities is transformative solutions for inclusive development. The role of innovation in fueling an accessible and equitable world. That is a mouthful. In your opinion, what does a more accessible and inclusive world look like? Thanks to innovation. Robbie, I'm going to start with you. And I'm also going to piggyback onto that question. Is it truly possible to have a truly accessible and equitable world? Why or why not?
I might start with your second piggyback question there, because that's a really hard question, and my answer is yes and no. I think we cannot ignore the fact that in life there's greed, and there will always be self-serving people out there who are going to want to protect their space and their power and their authority, even if it's at the expense of someone else's human rights. But we also know that there's a bunch of ways to reduce the impact of those people through, things like advocacy and awareness, education. So I think regardless of those people who might not ever change, we must aim for achieving total accessibility, inclusion, and equity. Because I don't see there being any other option. But what I would say to that is, until we dismantle capitalism, our progress towards accessibility and equity is always going to be limited. So that takes me into the first question you asked about the International Day of People with Disabilities and this idea of transformative solutions and inclusive development. I think for me, an accessible world, if I was to imagine the ideal world, it'd be one where people with disabilities are in decision-making roles and positions of leadership and authority. Why? Well, we're problem solvers. I truly believe we're problem solvers. Every day we're navigating a world that wasn't designed for us. So we have this unique perspective on how to approach innovation and how to design and deliver solutions to the challenges, and there are a fair few of them that the world is facing right now. So I see disabled people with disabilities as leaders of change, in particular, and to Winfred's point there, women with disabilities, people of color who have disabilities, Indigenous people with disabilities, and others who are historically have experienced intersectionality. So I don't think that's too far-fetched to believe in a world that looks like that. So can we do it? I think we can.
I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question. Can we do that without being capitalist? Can we do that without capitalism?
Without what?
Without capitalism.
Oh, without capitalism. Well, look, the thing with capitalism is that it's based in the values of profitability, productivity, competitiveness. And we know, looking back at history, looking back in hindsight, that these are the values that have disadvantaged people with disabilities throughout history. So I think if we are to, and I think the question was to truly achieve accessibility and equity, we have to look at alternatives to capitalism. I think without that, our progress will still be great, it will still be progress, but it won't be that truly accessible, equitable world that we're advocating for here. I think that's the next step in our journey, the natural progression. We need to be aiming for alternatives, and people with disabilities should be leading the charge.
I cannot agree with you more. And the most difficult thing is not only being anti-ableist, but being anti-capitalist and anti-ableist. So I completely agree with you. Thank you so much, Robbie. Haseeb, um, is a truly accessible and equitable world possible? Why or why not? And in your opinion, what does a more accessible and inclusive world look like thanks to innovation?
In 2019, I went to Abu Dhabi to attend the Special Olympics World Summer Games. The Emirates of UAE have transformed their country into a fantasy land. I saw inclusion everywhere, from the roads to the buses to the buildings to the skyline. Everywhere you saw it was promoting inclusion, whether by using banners or on the TV. It was just incredible. And while all these things are very impressive, what astonished me the most was the fact that every person in the country knew about the games, and every person was aware about people with intellectual disability. They treated us with respect, love, and kindness. There were times I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. It was truly special. And while UAE is a relatively small country, but if they can make it possible, then I why can't the whole world? It just takes a little effort at all levels. In UAE, their king and crown prince were both at the games enjoying in the stands. Why can't more heads of states be like this? Their kids would come on school trips to support our matches. Why can't the same be done all over the world? It needs to happen at all levels, and only then can true inclusion be possible, and I believe it is very possible.
Thank you very, very much, Haseeb. What does a more accessible and inclusive world look like to you, Haseeb? Thanks to innovation. Haseeb, that question was for you.
Yes, yes. What did you ask about?
Yes. What does a more accessible and inclusive world look like to you thanks to innovation?
Mm, so, where all people are respected no matter their abilities or disabilities, love, inclusion prevails.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Ahouty, is a truly accessible and equitable world possible in your opinion? Why or why not?
Okay, thank you very much. For me, an accessible and equitable world
Could
is
you speak closer to your microphone, please?
okay.
Thank you.
I said that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I said that an accessible and equitable world is an ideal. because the world itself is not fair. I've noticed that the world is ruled by a group of people who have concentrated power in their hands and seek to dominate always the weak or marginalized people at the bottom of the ladder. They control resources, and there is not equal distribution of that resources. For instance, in Africa, it is rare, let's say it is impossible to see a person, a poor person, to sue a rich person and hope to win the case. Justice always vindicates the rich person. Besides that, despite the campaigns you carry out around the world, some people continue to consider people with disabilities as subhuman with ideas of pity. People with disabilities are excluded from civic participation in our country. Our constitution disqualifies people with disabilities from political games. So we cannot say that regarding all this injustice, the world is accessible and equitable. For me, in my opinion, regarding what is more, a world more accessible thanks to innovation, I think that for me, a more accessible world could be, thanks to innovation, could be a world where a person with disability can stay in his home country and stay connected to opportunities worldwide thanks to the magic of technology. It means that I can stay in my country and order a product from US, from Germany, without traveling. Additionally, for people with disability, for instance, it is an opportunity offered for them to enjoy the advantage of assistive technology that can, like artificial intelligence, that can help them to break isolation, loneliness, and also explore job opportunities. Because there are some software, there are software devices and equipment. For example, there is the dictation software or voice recognition software that converts speech to text. There are electronic magnifiers which magnify text, and this help people, blind people, to read, to have the test. And there are many software that can help people with disabilities to be in contact with the world, to participate in the construction of a community, to participate in the debate, to learn. So for me, to have an accessible world, it is compulsory to have or to make available assistive technologies for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are right now we are using something that has made this world more equitable for us. We're using Zoom, and without Zoom, we could not have this event and speak with people from all over the world at all different times of the day and evening. So we are benefiting from this innovation as disabled individuals by using Zoom. So, there is technology, but there's so much more that can be done. Winfred, do you believe that a truly accessible and equitable world is possible? Why or why not?
To me, I can say the world is accessible. It is a yes and a no. Why? For me, in Kenya, the accessibility factor is not, the world is not accessible because of poverty and lack of technology, education, so lack of information, especially those in the rural, not those in Nairobi, the capital city of Embu. Also in Nairobi, you have slums. Many are denied information and the poverty level. Some of them even don't own a phone. And the internet, using the internet, like today using the Zoom, you have to purchase some bundles. So even using the social media, it is also a challenge. It's only for those who their level of poverty is not all that overwhelming. So even communication, many of them are denied information. Even the newspaper, you don't have cash to buy the newspaper, or you don't own a TV or a radio. So information is denying the world to be accessible. The other good thing, the world can be accessible when people come together, like what you have said. Today I'm using Zoom. We are talking to the world, and the technology, the invention, you can be disabled and work at the comfort of your home. If you have those gadgets, the laptop, the smartphone, you can work without having to move and avoiding those transport charges, using those wheelchairs, all those aids. The world can be accessible when we get information and the playing ground is leveled. Yes.
Thank you very much, Winfred. And it's important to know that accessibility is not just physical access, it's also financial access. It's also having financial accessibility, having resources available to you, and having resources being accessible to you as well. I have one final question before we take questions from the audience. And I will start with Haseeb. Haseeb, what is something you want to be remembered for regarding your advocacy? I will go ahead and go to Robbie. Robbie, what is something you want to be remembered for regarding your advocacy?
I think it would be opening the door for others. I think advocacy can be quite a lonely and isolated journey, because the whole point of advocacy is that you're pushing into areas that that haven't been pushed into before, and challenging people and how they think about things and how they respond to things. So for me, you know, growing up, I didn't have people who looked like me in leadership roles that I could look up to. But when I became a bit older and I did get into advocacy and I looked around me, I realized that there's actually, one, I stand on the shoulders of giants who have come before me, and two, there are all sorts of people journeying this advocacy journey in their sectors as well. So other women, other people with disabilities, Indigenous populations, rainbow communities, and that actually we do have a lot we can share and support each other with. So if I would like to be remembered for one thing, it would be leaving the door open and providing a pathway for others to come to follow me as I've followed others. Yeah, I think that would be it, because we need more people with disabilities in leadership positions leading innovative change, and the only way we can do that is by keeping that door open for others and holding our hand out and bringing people along with us.
Thank you so much, Robbie. Ahouty, what is something you want to be remembered for when it comes to your advocacy?
Okay. For me, I think advocacy is a key component of our life, and it is something like a continuous sacrifice and engagement that we must take in our life. There are sometimes we fail, but we must not stop, because our life itself is a challenge. For people with disabilities, I think no sacrifice is too much. As long as we will have people with disabilities, I think that we have advocacy as a tool to claim our rights. I did it, and I got some accomplishments in my country, and I'm very proud, because thanks to advocacy I carry in our country, government in our country have decided to pay attention to people with disabilities, and for that, this year we have decided to provide wheelchairs to students with disabilities that live in the rural areas, so that they can go to school easily. They have decided to take into account the accessibility in the new buildings, administrative buildings. They have decided to make some ramps in some administrations, the public administration, so that people with disabilities could have access to these buildings. So I think that advocacy is very important for us to change the life of people with disabilities in our country and in our communities.
Thank you, Ahouty.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Haseeb, what is something you want to be remembered for regarding your advocacy?
I wish to create life as we know it, a book by Michael Blueby, which is about his child with disability, and while he's explaining how his child has difficulty understanding what a traffic section is and how it works. He says, perhaps those of us who can understand this intersection have an obligation to represent the children who can't. Perhaps we have an obligation to inform our child about the traffic and to inform the traffic about our children. As those children grow, perhaps we need to foster their abilities to represent themselves and to listen to them as they do. I wish to be remembered as someone who made sure that not only did I ensure that people with intellectual disability were made aware about what they can achieve in life, I also went on to make the people around them more aware about the potential of people with intellectual disability, were hardworking, were honest, and were fun to work with. Come to our world and see what we see. Don't put labels on us. Teach us, befriend us, accept us in your schools, invite us to your job interviews, choose us in your sports team. Just come say hi. Maybe we can change mind like you never thought before. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Haseeb. That was wonderful. Winfred, what is something you want to be remembered for when it comes to your advocacy?
The thing I want to be remembered with in my advocacy, it is seeing every woman and girls with a disability. They are included in most of the things. Their rights are concealed. The government and all stakeholders have put all policies that will empower women with disabilities in place, and they are practiced here in Kenya, and seeing that every woman and a girl with disability knows our rights and is willing to participate so that we can deliver ourselves from the yokes of poverty and we can enjoy our life as big women and live for our purpose in this world and enjoy our living.
Thank you so much, Winfred.
And ensuring that everyone who is disabled understands and knows his right and is willing to fight for his rights, and the justice system are put in order so that we can all work and feel empowered as equal human beings. Thank you.
Thank you. Tiffany have a question. Tiffany would like to know if the speakers can share if they have a big goal or dream for your advocacy over the next couple of years and how viewers might be able to support them. Robbie, would you like to answer that question?
The challenge is how to pick just one thing to talk about. Okay, if I was to think of it in the context of the Lucy Foundation, which is one of the things I'm involved in. So we train and employ people with disabilities from throughout the entire value chain of our coffee production line, from when it's grown in Mexico to when you drink the coffee in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Now, you would have heard me reference before some of the challenges I have with the capitalist model and what that's done for the disability community. So with the Lucy Foundation, we're a social enterprise where we are trying to become financially sustainable and reinvest the profits that are made from coffee sales back into social objectives, which for me is disability rights. But it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole when you're a social enterprise trying to operate and do things differently in a system that doesn't lend itself to what you're doing. So we want to challenge, we want to advocate, we want to do these things, but the system doesn't allow us to flourish and grow and to do that in a way that really acknowledges that we can do things differently when it comes to employment and business and production lines and coffee. So I would like to see in the future disability-led innovation become fully funded and not just piecemeal bits and pieces here and there from charitable giving, but to see real investment in the solutions that we are proposing to the challenges that we are facing as a world. Because I really think that when we get it right for the disability community, the whole world benefits. So there is so much value in investing in disability-led innovation and change. That's what I would like to see. That's my goal. That's what we're working on. It's a biggie, but no, I'm confident and optimistic.
And how can viewers support you in accomplishing this goal that you have?
Spread the word. Spread the word, get people involved, understand where your products, where your services come from, who has designed them, who has made them, have they involved the disability community? And this can be, it doesn't have to be coffee, but it can be anything. Be curious, ask questions about where things come from and how they were made. If you know people with money, send them my way. I'll put it to good use. But otherwise, yeah, spread the word about excellent examples of disability-led innovation, whether that's through social media, through reaching out through LinkedIn. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You might want to talk to you about that coffee sometime. Ahouty, what is a big goal or dream that you have for your advocacy, and how can we support that dream?
Okay. For our contest, deal with disability is a bit complex because you have to take into account the type of disability. There are people with visual impairment, there are people with mobility impairment, there are people with hearing impairment. So I intend to create a center that will be a place where people with disability will work, and where we have some experts regarding the different type of handicap, and then this expert will receive or will analyze the needs of people with disabilities according to the handicap, and then this expert will help them to find the solution to the problems people with disabilities face. Because in our country, the major problem of people with disabilities here is the problem of employment. So I think that my goal through the creation of this center is not only to to take the needs of people with disabilities, but to help them to be self-sufficient, to be financially independent, so that the center will provide learning opportunities for people with disabilities, so that we will be self-sufficient. So you will have program on leadership, program on entrepreneurship, and a program on technology, because these many components, I think, together can help people with disabilities to have the right place and contribute to the community they live, or at the national level to contribute to the social and economic level of the country.
Thank you. Okay, I want to ask you a quick question. In Côte d'Ivoire, the main language spoken is French, correct?
It's
And
French.
French, and in French, there is no direct translation for disabled, which is why you said handicapped, because in French, the word is handicap, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to make that note. It is a cultural thing. There is no direct translation of the word disabled in French. That is why Ahouty said handicap. Although
Okay.
it is an outdated term by many means, when it comes to language and culture, we have to understand that there's not always a direct translation to the word disabled. I have one more final question. Robbie, I'm gonna go to you for the final question before we wrap up for the evening. I am asked, I would love to know if the speakers would be willing to talk about how they are currently using social media to support their advocacy.
Yeah, social media is has changed a lot for the global disability community. So for example, with the Lucy Foundation, we run the entire thing on social media, excuse me, and WhatsApp. So we have team meetings on WhatsApp. We use Google Drive to host all of our key documents and internal working bits and pieces. And then we use social media to share the stories of the people who grow the coffee, who process, who roast, who sell the coffee, because so often we don't know the people behind our products, and they're people with hopes and dreams, and in our case they're people with disabilities, with names and passions and dreams and goals. And so we use social media to create transparency in what we do. And I think social media, there are a lot of downsides to social media, but one of the great things about it is that it's generated transparency and accessibility for people who we would never have connected otherwise, much like today's meeting. So that's how we use it. We use it as a tool for change and to shifting the narrative about what people with disabilities can and are doing.
Do you use WhatsApp as just like for chatting between your group, or how are you using, specifically, how are you using WhatsApp?
So in the area where the coffee is grown in Mexico, there's often issues with weather, connectivity. So technology is not always readily available, but WhatsApp is. So we use that for sharing stories, for sharing photos, for understanding what's happening on the ground, for meetings, for sharing documents. it's really it's a really useful tool for us, because in New Zealand, not many people have used WhatsApp. I don't know why, but more recently, yes, but we were introduced to it by the team on the ground in Mexico, who said this is what is accessible for us technology-wise. And so we adopted it on our side, and we've used it ever since.
And one final question regarding WhatsApp. Are there people on your team that are multilingual? Because there are bilingual people all over the world, but perhaps many of those disabled individuals that you're working with, Spanish is their first language. So how are you dealing with the language difference?
Technology, again, has become our best friend. So we use Google Translate. So for example, I don't speak very good Spanish. I speak a little bit of Spanish, not very well, but our director on the ground in Mexico speaks Spanish and only speaks a little bit of English and not very well. So Google Translate is our best friend, and we use all of the tools available to us that are free. We don't pay for them, to ensure that we can communicate clearly with each other. Only very rarely do we need a translator to support us, because innovation has just meant that these tools are available to us anyway. So that's also accessibility wise as well. You know, when we're talking about interpreters or screen readers, the innovation that has come out in the last 10 years is phenomenal. And, you know, it's worth making the point that many of the platforms that everyone uses now, mainstream, were designed and originally intended for the disability community, had the disability and accessibility in mind, and it benefited everyone, and now everyone uses it. So that's what I mean when I say I would love to see more people with disabilities leading the change in these areas, because we know what we're doing.
Thank you. We absolutely do know what we're doing. And I want to make a point again, something I always talk about within my own advocacy, is that online activism is real activism. So everything that our panelists that they're doing online is real activism. There's no such thing as online and in real life activism. They are both very real and very valid. And without our online apps and tools, we would not be able to mobilize as the largest minority group in the world. So online activism is real activism, and social media is 100% valid to use as part of advocacy and activism. I want to thank everyone who joined today's discussion. Thank you to our interpreters. Thank you to our panelists, Robbie, Abbasi, Haseeb, and Winfred. Thank you. Some of who woke up in the middle of the night to participate in this discussion. That shows you how important this discussion is. We hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. Again, my name is Mary Patrick. I am Diversability DLC Community Engagement Manager. It was a pleasure moderating this evening. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.